Collin,
Curtis.
how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. Here we are. We've made it. This is the final episode of Collin and Curtis in the Morning for this year,
Yes, it
2016.
is. Oh, I thought you were gonna say like forever. I was gonna
Forever?
be
No, maybe.
heartbroken.
Maybe forever. Do you still want to do this? Do you still want to do this podcast next year?
I guess so. Sure, why not?
Yeah. All right. I guess you've convinced me.
Yeah.
We'll keep making this podcast.
I mean, they kept saying it's a Final Fantasy, but then we know how that went. It just keeps coming out.
Final Collin and Curtis. Right? We'll just call it that.
15.
And we'll just Final Collin and Curtis 15, episode Duske.
Reclaim the podcast.
Reclaim the knack. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Are you excited for Christmas?
I'm excited for Christmas. Super Mario Run just came out. I've been very excited playing that. This is the first, let's call it game I've been playing on my iPhone for a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
Let's call it.
Because Miitomo is not really a game.
It's an app. Let's just go.
It's like a lifestyle.
It's a social network of endless possibilities.
Endless is maybe not the word I would use, but sure.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I thought we would use this episode to kind of reflect on the year that was 2016. And Collin, what better way to do it than to go all the way back?
I'm gonna wind this back.
To rewind it back, we have to go back to the very first episode of Collin and Curtis in the Morning in 2016, way back in January. Way back. It was just days after Activision acquired Major League Gaming.
Oh my gosh.
It was a whole new world. We were sitting here thinking, man, 2016 is going to be so great.
Mm-hmm.
And then every celebrity died. And here
we
are.
That's right. That did happen this year. I shouldn't laugh at that. But...
Collin, it's not a laughing matter. Come on.
Sorry. Oh. That's right. That did happen this year.
It was so funny. So I went back and I listened to a good portion of our very first episode this year, and it was pretty great for the most part, because it was like, oh, that's a funny prediction we made, or oh, we did this, and it's funny how that turned out, little did we know. But at the very end of that podcast, I mentioned before we sign off, I mentioned, I think it's going to be a pretty good year. 2016 is looking pretty good, and I think in retrospect, I couldn't have been more wrong. If I'm not referring to video games. Video games, I feel like, have been pretty solid this year, Collin.
I agree, yeah.
There's been some issues, there's been some disappointments, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think on the whole, we've had a lot of really, really solid hitters. But Collin, here's what I want to do. And we'll go through this kind of quick. So we had a list of games at the very beginning of this year, games that were coming out this year. And we did our hype check. And so we both gave kind of numbers, 0 to 100. Just kind of to give off a vibe of like, here's how excited we are. Like, are we feeling it? Are we feeling the hype, or are we kind of like maybe cold on that game? Now some of those games we did still have not come out, so I've taken those off the list.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and then some of those games were games that we just never got a chance to play.
Mm-hmm.
So I took those off. So I kept the ones that at least one of us have played. And I figured it'd be fun to go through and say what we said about those games earlier this year, and then looking back and seeing what we actually felt about them once we played. And then we both gave a prediction for 2016, and so we'll go back and look to see how that panned out.
Yeah.
So you don't know. I have the results in front of me. You know none of these, because I wanted to keep it a bit of a surprise.
I'm looking at a blank document, basically.
Mostly, yeah. So to kick things off, we had Alien Nation.
Oh yeah.
Now Collin, you gave this a 53. You were not feeling it.
I was not.
And then I gave it a 70. So I was kind of like, I was a little excited, but was unsure. Now this is a game that, correct me, this wasn't on PlayStation Plus, was it? I think it was like March or April this year.
No, this was one of the PSN Play promotions.
Yeah, okay.
Wasn't it?
So it wasn't a promotion, yeah. I think you're right.
I think it was in a promotion.
It was with that and like Salt and Sanctuary and Invisible Ink, I think. So Alien Nation, we both played a little bit of. I never finished it.
I think you played more than I did.
Yeah. I want to, like, in general, 53, do you think that lined up with what you thought? Do you think you liked it a little more than you expected to?
I would say I liked it a little bit more. I think the 53 where that came from was just because I wasn't really a fan of Dead Nation. And I thought maybe it was just going to be a little bit more than that. But I felt Alienation was a lot deeper in its gameplay and its mechanics. And it just looks super solid on the PS4.
Sure.
So I would say it's probably grown to... I'd go maybe a 75.
Okay.
It's one of those games I thought about the other day and I wanted to go back to.
You and me both.
Yeah.
You and me both. You know, I definitely. So I played to the. I think what I found is multiplayer in this game was so integral because I remember reaching a roadblock. There was a specific mission that I just couldn't do alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you and I kept talking like, oh, we'll get to it eventually. We'll get to it eventually. We just never did.
Yeah.
So I ended up stopping to play it. But I did really enjoy it. I think, like you did, like if I were to score it, like kind of like how I felt about it after playing it, I'd probably be in the 80s. I thought it was a really solid game. Just something I didn't spend as much time as I really wanted to. And there was a lot of those games this year. Plants vs. Zombies, Garden Warfare 2 especially.
Oh, yeah.
I really need to get back to that game at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, okay, that game came out. It was a bit better than maybe both of us expected, which is good.
Yeah.
Good so far. And then we hit Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah.
So Collin, you gave this a 33. I don't think you played this at all.
Did not.
I don't think your opinion probably changed at all either.
It's
about what you expected.
It's probably still staying there. Yeah.
I had a 90 for this game.
Oh wow.
Collin, my opinion, I really don't know where I stand on this game anymore. I played a few hours and I just couldn't get into it. I understand why a lot of people love it. I totally get why people are into this game. It's just not my kind of thing, unfortunately. I even mentioned it on the podcast of like, there are some reservations I have, but I'm very excited by what I see. I just think ultimately like playing out a controller wasn't great. There were some controller, like PC to controller issues there.
Yeah.
And, I just kind of fell away from it and every time I'd see it on the console, I'd think about it and just be like, I just don't feel it. I'm just not feeling like playing it right now. So let's move on. Invisible Ink. This is another one that I think only I played.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, only you.
But we fell pretty close. You gave it a 67 on your hype index. I gave it a 75. Collin's another one. I played a couple missions and just stopped and never went back to. This is probably the least I've played of any of the Clay games.
Yeah, so that was it this month that game's free on PlayStation Plus?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think I've got it on my console. I just haven't played it yet. I would almost say it's probably lower now. I don't know why I gave it a 67. I would say probably around maybe the 40s.
Okay. I'm still probably about where I'm at. I did really like what I played. It was just that was more the victim of coming out at a really bad time.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of other stuff, and right now it almost feels like there's no end in sight for me of like this a backlog.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know when I'll get back to it. I do want to because I actually did really enjoy what I played. So I think I'd maybe be higher than a 75 on this game right now.
Okay.
I just haven't played enough, to really have a full verdict on it. But I did like it, and it if it is on Plus this month, definitely check it out.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool. I just didn't play enough of it. Rocket Birds 2, however, Collin, you fell in at 64. I fell in at 78. I ended up reviewing this game. I loved it.
Good.
I think it is better than the original Rocket Birds in basically every way. I think maybe the soundtrack, I'm not sure about. I think having had a few months to kind of reflect on it, I still think the first game probably has a better soundtrack. I just like some of the songs better. But Rocket Birds, I gave like a 4 or a 4.5. I think maybe 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd probably be upper 80s, maybe closer to 90 on it. I really, really like that game a lot. I think it's a game that not a lot of people talked about, unfortunately, like the first game.
Yeah.
And more people should check it out. It's great, and it's got a really cool co-op component too.
I would say I'm probably the same, maybe even less. I don't know. It's like when you have a game that's coming up, you're like, yeah, I might actually play that, when you're looking at the year ahead, but then all of these other releases come out and you're just like, well, why was I really excited about that? Like,
Sure,
I think, even like as a side note, I think when Final Fantasy had that first release date of like September, or Final Fantasy 15 had that first release date of September 30th, I think we talked about like, this might be a game I really get to like in the end.
Yep.
But then like that
you were slowly, there was a period of a few months this year where you and I would be talking even off air, and you were like, like, I could see myself. I think I might pick it up.
Yeah,
I think I might get
and
it.
That was
and then
before,
it got pushed back.
That was before we knew about Battlefield 1, Titanfall 2, Call of Duty, Watch Dogs 2, all of these other things. That was before like we knew all about these other games, and it just kind of
fell into that mix. Sure.
Yeah.
And I guess like the next one's actually something that is interesting to me, especially looking forward. Salt and Sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
This came out also part of that play promotion earlier this year. You were a 64, I was a 78 on it. Of course, I'm sorry, nope, that was Rocket Birds 2. You were 71, I was 87 on Salt and Sanctuary. That makes a little bit more sense. I'm a huge Dark Souls fan. Bloodborne, Demon Souls, whatever. So Salt and Sanctuary totally fits into my wheelhouse. And I reviewed it. I think I gave it a 4, maybe 4.5. I don't remember.
According to some people, you hated it though.
I got into a bit of trouble with this one.
Yep.
Because if you remember, and it's interesting. Not to get too personal, but like I'm very self-conscious. And I like to think, I don't have I know I think some issues like, some people will get criticized for different things and maybe they have thin skin and so they'll lash out. And I do my best not to do that. I try, if I respond to anyone who criticizes me, I'll do my best to be very like civil and say like, oh yeah, I understand your point.
Yeah.
And I actually did that in the comments for my Salt and Sanctuary review, especially on YouTube. I was like, well, I'm trying to like, this is the point I'm trying to get across. Maybe I didn't do it very well in the review, but hopefully you can understand what I'm, where I'm coming from on this. And the trouble that I got in, Collin, was kind of making the complaint that this game that was heavily inspired by Dark Souls and kind of wore that inspiration on its sleeve and was not ashamed of that at all. And that's totally fine. My thing was I felt that it was too similar, that it didn't do enough to set itself apart.
Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of took issue with that. A lot of people were like, well, what do you expect? Like, this is... And it was more of, I guess they didn't understand why that was a bad thing because, hey, if you're going to be inspired by something, if you're going to copy something, Dark Souls isn't a bad game. And they're totally right. I think, ultimately, I still feel the same. I still really, like, Salt and Sanctuary is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It is really good. I still think my one hang up with it is I wish it had done a couple things more just to set itself apart a little bit. Because ultimately it got to the point where it was just like almost everything was the same.
Yeah.
With a few exceptions, of course. And really, really great game. Really great game. But the thing that makes me interested is in the next year or so, we're going to see a few more games come out. A few more like indie kind of 2D side-scrolling games that also borrow heavily from Dark Souls. And, I mean, we're also going to get Nioh, which is, a lot of people kind of say is like Samurai Souls. And so I'm going to be really curious. I feel like, we've had a few games in the past, like Lords of the Fallen as well, that has very much been obviously inspired by Dark Souls, has a very similar formula. Mm-hmm. And I think I've always, ever since Demon Souls, I've been interested to see what kind of impact that would have. Even Watch Dogs, to some weird extent, has an element of that invasion mechanic in there. So it's kind of spread slowly throughout the industry. In the next year, because... we have a handful of games that are coming out that are going to be quite similar, and I'm curious to see how that's going to work out, or how that's going to pan out, or what games, whether they go the Salt and Sanctuary route where it's just very, very similar, or like we've seen with Nioh, whether or not they do a few different things mechanic wise to differentiate themselves and make those games stand on their own.
Yeah.
Rather than just being, this is, I mean, look, if you like Dark Souls, play this game, because it's just like that, but don't expect anything more.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be very curious. I think 87, my hype index score for Salt and Sanctuary, probably is in line with where I ended up falling on that game. I imagine, I don't know about you, 71 seems high for you.
Yeah, I'd probably stay there. Did this game ever come to Vita?
I believe it's still in the process of coming to Vita.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be a little while. Yeah.
It seemed like something that appealed to me more than a regular Dark Souls game, but I'd probably maybe be a few points lower, maybe.
Yeah, and I do want to say, like, major thanks to the developer James Silva and I'm blanking on her name, his wife. They both worked on the game in many different respects, and they I mean, one, super talented. You know, they've done some great stuff in the past as well, including Salt and Sanctuary. But thanks to them, we did a dev chat with them earlier in the year, and so we got to talk to them about the game and all sorts of different aspects about it. And they were very nice. They were like super nice, and it was great talking to them. So thanks to them for coming on the chat. It's a good memory from this past year.
Yeah.
So at this point, Collin, in the podcast, you actually fed me some rapid fire games.
Okay.
To go through, just to give you a score of like, here's what I'm feeling, and I feel like some of these could be interesting. One especially because I think both of us have very passionate feelings about one of these games. So first off, you started with Resident Evil 0. Now this game came out in January. It's the HD kind of remaster of it, similar treatment to the original Resident Evil GameCube version. And I said 75, and I think ultimately that was pretty spot on for me. I was excited for it still. I never played Resident Evil 0, but I kind of knew to expect that it wasn't going to be as amazing as the original Resident Evil, of course. I knew that it was, I knew that I would probably have some issues with it, and I did. I still liked it for what it was, but it's not something that's going to stick with me, and I probably won't go back and play it anytime soon. And then we had Firewatch.
Oh.
So, I mean, Collin, you and I, we bring up this game every once in a while, and Firewatch was something both of us were very excited about. So we didn't get your hype index score at the beginning of the year, but I gave it an 88. That's about how excited I was for that game, and I think you and I feel pretty similar about Firewatch. I was incredibly disappointed with that game.
Yes, absolutely.
The opening of that game, not to be too specific, the opening like 5 to 10 minutes of that game is probably one of my favorite openings from a game this year.
That opening had me.
It was incredible, and just the way it was done, I sat there thinking as I was playing it, just like thinking, wow, this is really going to be that good. Like this is going to live up to my expectations for this game. And just slowly over the course of the game, they just kind of dropped it.
Yep.
And it just became like, as I got further and further, the more and more just kind of disappointed I got until the ending. And I think you and I both agree that we feel they dropped the ball on the ending pretty hard.
So like, this is going to sound really weird. I watched some like sports video earlier today on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I logged in on the computer we're recording this podcast on now, and this is fairly adequate. There was a suggestion video that was like worst times, just like something like don't make sure you don't celebrate too early. And think of that game. I think of Firewatch right now, thinking of that like it's like Firewatch is like, it has me so much, and it's like this game's gonna do it. It's gonna be great, and then it just misses the 10-yard field goal or something like that. You know what I mean?
It doesn't stick the landing.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think if the last 10 minutes of that game was
disappointing to me.
If the last 10 minutes of that game was done in a way that you and I felt, oh wow, that was really great, I think that would change my entire outlook.
Yeah.
I mean, even technical issues aside, of course, the ending of that game kind of broke me, and as far as what I felt about that game, and what you said about celebrating early, I think that's I'll bring that up in a couple minutes as well.
Okay.
About another game, but yeah, Firewatch is probably one of my biggest disappointments of this year. It's not a bad game.
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
Respects, but it was something that, from everything I'd seen of it, just like the few little trailers we'd seen, some like little story bits we had gotten, the mystery around that game, and of course the way it looked as well. I was so excited for that game, and I really thought, and of course, who it's being developed by. You know, we had people who had worked on the first season of Walking Dead, who kind of left Telltale to make their own to make Campo Santo.
Yep.
And so it's like, yeah, I love the first season of Walking Dead. It was fantastic. It was one of the best games I had played that year. And yeah, it just did not come together for, I guess, either of us.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. And I should say, I feel like we're kind of middle with a lot of these games. Like some of these games we've talked about, we really like. Some we're disappointed. I think on the whole, at least for me, the vast majority of games I've played this year, I've loved, or at least liked. These are just the ones that we kind of picked out for our podcast earlier this year. We also had Unravel, but I never got around to it. And Unravel's a weird one. Do you remember that game came out this year?
Yeah, I do.
It was a game that felt like could do no wrong. It was adorable. Everyone, you'd see Yarny, and it's like, yeah, Unravel. I'm excited for that game. And like the guy would come out on stage and kind of sheepishly talk about his game.
Yeah.
And everyone was excited. It was like, what could go wrong? And
you mean Sean Murray or?
Well,
whoa, too soon. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. But sorry. You know, and neither of us have played it, of course. But
yeah, I haven't played it.
It kind of came out and just fell flat. It seemed, and I would still like to go back and play it at some point. Of course, I don't want to judge it, you know, against other reviews when I haven't played it myself. But it definitely felt, unfortunately, like one of those games that just was so quickly forgotten, which is sad.
Yeah.
But let's move on. Collin, the next one, the second to last one, No Man's Sky.
Yep.
So you and I both had a score to give this, a hype index for what we were feeling about No Man's Sky this past January.
Yeah.
So still about half the year to go, a little over half the year to go till we finally be able to play it. Collin, in my own words on that podcast, I said, I'm a little skeptical, but quote, in my heart, it's 100. If they can make good, if that game can make good on what I think it could be, it's a 100.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in a second. You gave it a 72.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know about you, I think I would probably fall in line with that.
Yeah, I would say I'd probably be right at the same, too.
And you know, we've talked about No Man's Sky. We've talked about the kind of the controversy around it. And I think you and I, we never got super angry about it.
No,
like some people did. I think we acknowledged that, like, yeah, I at least like it.
Yeah,
but
it's a good game.
You know,
I think it's a good game.
I don't think it's bad. It's definitely, there are issues, of course. And
absolutely.
I'm curious / hopeful for the future. I hope it's going to be a very long road, and hopefully Hello Games can somehow pull it together. I'm not sure if they will or not. I think the patch that came out, the update that came out a couple weeks ago, is inspiring. It gives me hope for what they can do with that game. It was a lot bigger than I was expecting it to be. I haven't touched it yet. At some point, I do want to get back to that game, and I think I might sooner than I expected to.
Yeah.
But we talk about celebrating early, and Collin, my first hour with No Man's Sky, I really thought, I was like, oh my god, they might actually have pulled it off. Because my first hour, I was just on that one planet.
Yeah.
You know, and I was seeing it, and I guess I got the luck of a draw because I got a really cool planet with all sorts of different life forms, all sorts of different crazy caves and plant life, and so it felt like it was going to make good. And I think as I played more and more, you know, I never really got so incredibly disappointed with it that I hated the game. But I think as I played more and more, and as I kind of got spoiled on what the center of the universe was, there was definitely some disappointment there. It was a lot of just, I don't know, this is fine, but I don't know how much more I want to play of this, at least in its current state. But I don't know where do you land on No Man's Sky? You know, it's been close to half a year now since it first came out. What did you reflect on this game and everything that's happened around it? Where do you stand on this?
No Man's Sky is that game that if it was still on my hard drive and I had and not a ton of games to play, which we say that about every game.
Right.
But it's really that kind of like chill game to me that like you can just kind of just like sit back, listen to a podcast, go to a planet, scan some plant life, some animals, go to a base, level up your exo suit and stuff like that. That's the part I really enjoyed about it, that I was just able to just like, I didn't have to worry about killing certain things. I didn't worry to have to about like, oh, I gotta go to this objective and I gotta go, do this, and here's my next mission objective. It's just like, here's your way to the center of the galaxy. Here's kind of how you get there by building these different warp drives and stuff, but nothing's really like prodding you like, hey, come on over here. So I think that in that respect is something I really enjoyed about it.
Yeah, and again, I think we'll continue to talk about No Man's Sky throughout next year at least. Because I imagine both of us at some point will return to this game.
I
with the different patches and stuff, and I especially the last one, I do really want to check out the base building stuff. It looks really good, and I don't know, I'm always someone that kind of, I wouldn't necessarily paint Hello Games as an underdog right now. I think, and in maybe some people's eyes, they kind of have their backs up against the wall. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on them, more so than there's ever been, I think, and I guess however you feel about the game, it's a tough situation to be in. I do not envy them in the slightest, but man, I want to see them succeed so bad. I really do, and part of it's because I want that game to eventually reach, it's what it could, the potential that it has. But I don't know. I never got to that place where I was just angry at them.
Yeah,
that a lot of people was, and if you were, that's that's fine, as long as you weren't like violently lashing out at people, I guess. But I don't know.
There were a lot of those people.
Which it got ugly.
Yeah.
It got ugly for sure. But I also don't want to discredit anyone who was upset about how that game turned out. Of course. You and I don't think we ever got there. Personally. But yeah, No Man's Sky. That's I think it's funny when we do our Game of the Year awards, if we do categories, if that game were to win most disappointing, and it probably will for a lot of different websites, I can't blame them.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my personal biggest disappointment of the year, but it's gonna be hard to argue against, I think.
Firewatch is a bigger disappointment to me than No Man's Sky.
I think so too. But it's the type of thing where that's really hard to argue against it.
Yeah.
I often say, if someone were to tell me that Minecraft is their favorite video game of all time, I'd kind of be like, yeah, I could see it.
Yeah.
Totally. It's no Stardew Valley. No. So anyways, PlayStation VR. It was just the last thing that we did, kind of a hype check for. Yeah. I never got a number. I never gave a number. You gave a 50. You were very, and I think that actually represented both of us.
Yeah.
You and I both at the beginning of the year, I think we both were we weren't sure. We didn't know the price of it yet.
Yep.
We didn't know when it was coming out. We didn't know what the launch lineup looked like. There was a lot of unknowns in January, as it turned out. As is the case for many things every year, but for PlayStation VR specifically, I think we both were. I imagine that both of us probably wanted to want it. You know what I mean? We wanted it to be good enough that we would want to go out and get it day one, and that did happen. We both bought PlayStation VR. We've played VR. You finally have Rez.
I finally have Rez.
Rez finally showed up.
I haven't played it yet, but yes, I finally have Rez.
And I would say, before we talk Game of the Year site-wide over the next couple weeks, you might want to play that game.
Yeah.
For our VR category, at least.
Best VR game of the year, the VR demo disc.
Right.
Game of the year.
And you know what? So I wanted to talk about VR. I wanted to just, not spend too much time, of course. We're still trying to keep this under 40, 45 minutes here. But Collin, we're now in December. VR has been out for about 2 months now. We each have had a chance to play some different VR games, and we've seen some good and some bad.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about it? And we've also, we know of some VR games coming out next year. We've had some new ones announced. Resident Evil's just a month away.
Go tell Aunt Rhodey.
Go tell Aunt Rhodey. That everybody is dead.
Yeah.
How do you feel about? Yeah, how do you feel about VR now? You know, are you amped up on it? Are you excited for the future of VR? Like, are you kind of indifferent?
That's a great question. I honestly probably haven't played VR in probably like a month. Honestly,
might be the same for me.
Yeah. I mean, it had a great launch day. I mean, that list of the PlayStation Store update, December or October 13th, whatever that was, it was crazy.
So I'll just say this real quick. Like, I was, going through last night, like putting together a list of what are some of my favorite games I played this year, and I've narrowed it down to like 20, which is crazy. This is how good this year's been.
Yeah.
3 of those games are VR games.
Oh, good, cool.
And to me, it's like I really think, and I'll let you finish. Sorry for interrupting, but I really think that VR launch lineup was one of the better launch lineups for a platform in recent memory, at least.
Yeah. I almost want to say that, like, I was almost going to compare it to, like, the Vita launch lineup. Because I feel like the Vita had a great launch lineup as well.
Had Wipeout.
Yeah, had Wipeout, had Uncharted. It had, like, even just little stuff.
It had
like
Rayman Origins.
Yeah, like, even just
also,
little stuff to, like, little Deviants to Super Stardust, Ultra.
Yeah.
I think Escape Plan was a launch game.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Just, like, stuff like that. But yeah,
and it came out and it had Gravity Rush like just 4 months away or something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was really close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for VR. I still wish, even like at PSX, I wish they would have talked a little bit more about it.
Sure.
Like even that Sony San Diego game, I can't remember what they call that one. It's kind of by a new studio where you're floating around this something arena, Starblood Arena. Was that it? Yeah, I think that was it.
There's that, but there was also the Dino Frontier game.
Yeah, that looked kind
of
cool.
That I'm super amped on.
Yeah, that did look kind of cool. I forgot about that one. Yeah, I mean, VR's, I would say it's like probably like a 77 to me now. I think E3 is really what sold me. I have.
Oh, me too.
I have Battlefront. I still have not played the X-Wing Rogue One mission yet. I need to play that. But yeah, just still, it's gonna be that thing that like I maybe put on like maybe like once a month, maybe even less than that. That's like, hey, this is a cool experience, and then you take off and.
Well, and it's also the kind of thing where we've had some VR releases over the past month or so. Like every couple weeks, like 1 or 2 new things comes out, and it's one of those things where like everything was just front loaded. There was like 30 some games that first week or two. And so we were just like, that was the only thing I did for like a week or like 1 or 2 weeks. And so naturally it's going to kind of calm down. And I'll say this, like I really think, a lot of people talk about like, oh, a lot of the early VR games are kind of tech demo-y and stuff. And I look at Headmaster and I look at Until Dawn and I look at Thumper. And those 3 games specifically to me they really stood out. Wayward Sky also actually another one. These were games like that surprised me, or they felt like I was experiencing games in a new way.
Yeah.
Until Dawn like being a roller coaster and it feeling like it elicited those feelings that you would have riding a roller coaster, like going up and down hills, and it felt like it was so, I can't begin to explain. And Until Dawn, when you start going up an incline, and even though you're just sitting in a chair, not moving, somehow it feels like that. It feels like you're going up that incline.
Some would call it a rush of blood.
A rush of blood, for sure. God. But
sorry.
But those feelings you would get. And then of course that combined with just it being a really good kind of light gun game. That's the stuff that's going to stand out to me, and that makes me really hopeful for VR. It's still, of course, I think it's too early to give a final verdict. Of course, it's only been a couple months. We're not even that sure how it's selling. It seems to be selling the best of the 3.
Yeah, I think so.
but it's really really hard to tell, of course. And
Yeah.
I think Resident Evil 7 might be the first major tell for this.
Yeah, I was thinking of that, and I was also thinking of Farpoint as well. But
absolutely,
Resident Evil 7 comes first, so
and Farpoint we don't know.
Yeah.
And we don't know how much Farpoint's gonna cost. You need that gun thing. That has me a little nervous.
Sure.
But overall, yeah, I'm hopeful for VR. I am not using it constantly. I think the one thing, my one takeaway, and it's something unfortunately I'm not sure how much they can do about it, is some of the tracking stuff. I think ultimately is kind of a bummer, especially for like your Batman or your Job Simulator, or even the Brookhaven experiment. I had some issues with of like just the setup I have. It is kind of a nuisance to get everything set up in such a way for me to do kind of the standing VR games. And that's just the setup I currently have. Some people are better suited for that. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But with that, Colin, unless you have any last things about VR, I want to move into these predictions that we made.
Okay.
Okay,
nope,
so
you got nothing.
At the very end of the podcast, our first Collin Curtis in the Morning of the year, it's like the first week of January. We made one prediction each, but we kind of made like we had a couple other things that we said, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of look back on those as well. So Colin, I'm gonna start with you.
Me?
And I'm gonna ask you first. Do you remember what your prediction was for 2016?
Oh my goodness. Was it something No Man's Sky related?
No.
Okay.
So you made a prediction about a PSNStores review.
Oh, that's right, yes!
but we're just gonna like go more general of like how did this game perform on Metacritic, we'll say.
Yeah.
So Colin, you're do you remember specifically what it was?
Something about a Resident Evil spin-off or something like that.
So your prediction was that Umbrella Corps
what a game.
would be reviewed on our site. It wasn't. But you predicted that it would be given a 4 out of 5.
It's not the end of the year yet.
It certainly is not, but Metacritic converts out of 5, converts everything to 100.
I'm at 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10?
Sure.
I don't believe you. It is sitting at 38.
Oh!
Now, Colin, you've played Umbrella Corps. I wanna
played
know,
probably...
What do you think of this game?
I've played probably about 2 hours of Umbrella Corps. I played it at PAX South, but then I also played the free trial thing they had out.
Oh yeah.
It's not atrocious. It's not. I don't think it's a 39. I would say
back of the box quote. Not atrocious.
Yeah, I would give it somewhere around like out of 100, probably like a 55.
Okay. So 2.5 out of 5.
It's the problem with that game is I feel like it costs, what is it, $30 and an extra 10 and an extra 10 if you want to get the skins like Barry Burton and stuff like that. It breaks your heart. Okay. No one's playing online, which I can probably see why. But I am so thankful it is not called Resident Evil: Umbrella Corps. It's just Umbrella Corps.
Yeah,
I'm almost gonna.
I guess that's a silver lining.
I'm almost gonna contradict myself by almost saying it's sometimes atrocious. It's not atrocious, but that
sounds like something like a Bulletstorm would have on the back of its box. It's like, oh, this is actually a good thing. Sometimes atrocious.
Yeah.
Or like a Binding of Isaac.
If that game was $10, I wouldn't have any problem with it. But at being like a $30 game and the amount of content that's in it, it's just not worth it. I think if you're like a SOCOM fan that like really wanted like a tight, close quarters, maybe kind of SOCOM-y kind of thing, I think that would be fine for you. Of course, like even when I played the free trial, there was nobody online. It took minutes to get even anybody online.
Hey, do you remember MAG?
Yeah, I remember MAG. Massive action game. Super interactive.
Yep. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. Like I think it had some cool mechanics, being like you had some zombie, like this. It was something like zombies would not attack you, but if you got this backpack that got shot off your back, then zombies would come fleeing to you. And it was almost like all you had to do was maybe just like shoot this guy in the back, and then all these zombies would run after him.
I'm glad, if nothing else, that you gave it a shot.
Yeah, I did.
I am at least, we certainly gave some Resident Evil games a shot this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it necessarily panned out for either of us, but we did. We streamed all of Resident Evil 6 this year, and that was a painful experience. But we made it through.
Yes.
For me, you were like, it's not that bad. Or
hey, Curtis.
Hi.
Welcome to China.
Welcome to China. One of my memories, like I think that goes down as one of my great memories of 2016 is Welcome to China.
Yep.
And the way that 2015's great quote memory was Welcome Back.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And no one but us will understand.
Nope.
They might get Welcome to China if they played Resident Evil 6, but
yep.
That game was mostly atrocious.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So to move on, I'll go to before I get to my prediction, the very last thing I said on that podcast before we closed out was I said The Last Guardian is coming out this year, which was something you were not willing to say.
Yeah.
I think you were still convinced that it wasn't going to come out in 2016.
It almost didn't make it.
Well, it's funny because I said The Last Guardian will come out this year, and it'll be before E3. So 50% correct on that.
Yeah.
But The Last Guardian did come out. I have finished that game. Colin, maybe we'll take another time to talk more about it.
Mm-hmm.
Since we're going a little long here, but I really, really like that game.
Good.
A whole lot.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with how it turned out. So, and then to go to a second thing that you asked a question, is this the year that we get Knack on PlayStation Plus? I immediately responded with no, but we did get more Knack this year.
Yes, we did.
We got Knack 2. And,
Knack 2.
We got the announcement of Knack 2.
And our lives were forever changed.
And everything is different now.
Yeah.
All hail the Knack. And so, Colin, I want to end on this. And man, I was so close, Colin. I forgot that this was my prediction. But as I laid it out on the table, I was like, wow, I should have just stopped. Because I kept adding layers to this prediction. Which, a prediction that started out pretty spot on turned into a big hot mess.
Mm-hmm.
So, my prediction was, at E3 2016, they will announce a Crash Bandicoot collection.
Oh my goodness.
And I think the quote from that podcast was me saying, quote, I don't know, it'll probably be a remake of the first 3 games.
What?
And then things took a turn. So,
wow.
Right. I forgot about that. And like, granted, we had the tees, the Crash Bandicoot t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt, going back last night, I was like, wow, I feel pretty good about that.
You're feeling lucky.
And then I said, it's coming out September 9th, which would be the anniversary for Crash Bandicoot's original release. Also, that they were going to announce a brand new Crash game in development, and show a teaser trailer, and the Crash game would look oddly similar to a reskin Knack. None of those things happen, unless Knack 2 is secretly Crash Bandicoot. We don't know. Maybe.
He could pop in there.
And I also mentioned that I expected the collection to be like a Blue Point, but that is not the case either.
Yeah.
So I should have stopped while I was ahead.
Yeah.
Because it actually looked pretty good, but we did get Crash Bandicoot.
Yep.
He is returning. We've seen gameplay of that game, and it looks pretty good. So that was 2016. There was a lot of other things that happened. GameStop, obviously, they got into publishing, and one game has come out, Song of the Deep has come out, but we're kind of yet to see how that's all going to pan out. I think over the next year, it's going to be interesting to watch Game Trust form, and Deformers come out as well, and they got the deal with Tequila Works, whether that's Rhyme or a different game. We'll see. Obviously, PlayStation VR has a very interesting year ahead of it. I think VR in general now that everything's out. All the major hardwares are out. It should be fascinating to see what 2017 has in store for VR headsets. I wonder what the future is for PlayStation. We got the PlayStation 4 Slim, we got the Pro. The Vita had some games come out this year. Had some good games come out this year.
Yeah.
If you blinked and missed them, there were some good Vita games that came out this year, but you got to wonder at what point that dries up even more than it already has. I don't think Gio Corsi's still touting his Vita, but how much longer does that last?
Yep.
We'll have a full prediction show and stuff for 2017. But Collin, I want to ask before we end. You look back on this year, and what's your one big takeaway? What's one big memory you had from this year that you'll look back on 2016 and be like, yeah, that was okay. we did all right, all things considered.
Man, I don't know. It's this year has just flown by, and I feel like I just maybe don't have the memory for it. You kind of are we have different opinions on this game, but I still was a really big fan of Deadly Tower Monsters.
Yeah.
I played that way back in January, and I really liked that game.
Yeah.
I really like Klaus that came out January this year too. Cat Lateral Damage came to consoles. I was really a big fan of that.
You're big into that?
Oh, I don't like cats, but man, Cat Lateral Damage.
Oh, dude.
What a game. Sorry, we never had a cat growing up.
Anyways. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, right, yeah. Conversation with cats. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. How about you? What's your takeaway?
Oh man. I think the thing I'll look back on this year, between all the delays and disappointments and games coming out that I love or like or didn't like, Sony completely changing their conference structure.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
E3 and not so much the Pro reveal, of course, but E3 and PSX. I really think that points to a new direction for Sony press conferences.
Yeah.
PSX was a little bit of both worlds for sure, but I think we might be done with the 2-hour Sony press conference. Maybe it's too early to say, but I think this 1 hour, an hour 15, I think that's kind of how these Sony press conferences are going to go.
Yep.
I think they finally have kind of listened to people saying that they don't like the 2-hour press conferences. And also it's good that they just cut the fat out. I think that's done pretty well for them. But I think the main thing I'm really going to take away, and I'm always the optimistic, of course, but whatever your opinion is on these two games, I think the fact that Final Fantasy 15 and The Last Guardian both came out, and while they certainly have issues, Final Fantasy 15 maybe even more so, there's a lot you could levy at 15 for sure. But I think that the fact that both those games, considering all of the development turmoil that happened, things that we know and things that we probably never will know, that they came out and were good, and to me are in my top 3 games of this year, both of those games. Good. The fact that happened, it gives me hope, because you see stuff like Duke Nukem Forever come out, and those games that are just into endless development hell, and they come out and it just feels like they stand no chance. And so for those two games to come out and actually have come together, and somehow, I think Final Fantasy 15 even more so, they potentially saved that game in some ways, and Square Enix, I feel like has a pretty bright future ahead of it. And so the fact that those things happen, it gives me hope. It makes me feel like anything's possible. We can do it. If you put your mind to something, you can bring a game from the brink and bring it back and somehow make it work. I feel like it's that type of stuff that you can look at and just be excited. I think Doom actually is another really good example. That's a game that had been in development for a long time, and a lot of people were surprised by how good it was. So I think there was a lot of stories you could take from this year of man, here's this game that by all accounts, shouldn't be as good as it is. But not only is it good, it's like really, really good.
Yeah.
Top 5, top 10 quality for a lot of people, and that makes me really excited. I am extremely excited for next year, and we'll get into that in a future episode.
Yep.
I have despite all the delays and all the heartbreak, I have never been more confident in Persona 5 in my
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll talk about that when the time does come for that.
Yeah.
And a couple last things. One, in about 4 hours, we will finally get information on Dragon Quest XI.
Nice.
The next time we record a podcast, it'll probably be a few weeks. And so we probably won't talk about that game, or maybe we will. But if we don't, and you want to know what I think of it, just look at my Twitter, because I'll probably be freaking out.
Yeah.
2, obviously, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to everybody. Thank you for sticking with us throughout the year. It's been an interesting year for our site. We've had some ups and downs. It's been kind of hard to stick to a lot of reviews because we have such a small staff right now, and a lot of people are very busy. We don't, this isn't our job, so we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, and so we try to do what we can. I know it's not as good as we've done in the past, but I am hopeful for next year. I'm hoping maybe we can make some adjustments and make 2017 a good start, a good fresh start for PSNStores, and we can get on a better schedule of doing videos and reviews. And
yeah, absolutely.
I hope we can do that. I'll definitely work towards doing that for sure. But thank you for listening to us for this year and more. If you have sticking around, and it means a lot. It does mean a lot. And despite everything that's happened this year, I think video game wise, still feel like I can go to video games and be like, yeah, things are okay. Yeah. Things are all right for what that means. And that's all I got. Collin, you have anything to add to close the year out?
So I was just personally thinking of my favorite moments from this podcast. And some could point to me singing Hooked on a Feeling. Some could point to me singing the Spider-Man song at the end of one of the podcasts.
I forgot about that.
One person could even point to all of the Mitomo greatness that has come from this podcast.
I mean greatness.
Yes.
Right.
But my favorite moment, in hindsight, is the story of me telling you about me canceling or trying to cancel the No Man's Sky Collector's Edition off GameStop, and then it completely turning it on its head and going, and I was too late, my order has already been processed.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite moment from this year, that story. So
yeah, we talked a little bit too, and I like obviously our ukulele extended universe conversation. I really like I think that was really fun.
Yep.
Some of the pictures, like the I am Mayo double XP thumbnail I made, I really enjoyed making. Great. I thought that turned out pretty great.
Yeah.
All of our Mitoma conversation has been fun, of course.
Yep.
But you know what? I'll tell you what. And this is something that I don't think was recorded. But I'll tell you what. Maybe a little sentimental, video game wise, which maybe is weird. But you know what I really enjoyed?
What's up?
And I just thought about it. We both went to watch the PlayStation E3 experience in movie theaters.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was incredible. We got Resident Evil 7. It was everything I wanted.
Yep.
But when we came home, we just talked on Skype for I called you up on Skype and we were just freaking out about all these great announcements.
Yeah.
And we'd have to record that later on, all our reactions to that stuff. But that was great. I thought it was such a great moment.
Yeah.
To you follow up the year before, the E3 of Dreams, and it's how could they ever follow that up? And they did it. They had Kojima out there. They had Spider-Man.
God of War.
They had God of War. They had all of this really great stuff, and it was really cool just to be super excited and to kind of share in that excitement.
Yeah,
with people. So it's been, I think it's been a great year for video games, and I'm very excited for the next one as well. So that's gonna do it for us.
Yes,
Collin, we did it. we
did it. Yes,
we're still alive.
Thank you very much for listening, watching. Thank you for always tuning into this podcast each week, or mostly each week. We're pretty good on schedule. But again, as Curtis said, have a Merry Christmas, have a Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate. Please do it with a joyous heart. And
absolutely,
we'll see you next year.
And one last thing.
Yes?
Never forget, because we certainly didn't. It's like our good friend Parappa says, you gotta believe. And I like to think that we always did.
We always did, Curtis.
We'll see you in the new year.